Welcome to Today on Broadway for Monday, August 16th, the 41st anniversary of my parents' first date.
Oh, nice. Cute.
So there you go. I'm Broadway Radio's Matt Tamanini.
And I'm arts and culture editor Ashley Steves.
Ashley, over the weekend, Grace and I had the distinct pleasure to sit in the seats normally filled by the legendary This Week on Broadway crew. So she and I tried to live up to the lofty expectations that they set. So we brought in the big guns. We brought in Andy, Carl, and Orfeh.
Not bad.
Not bad. For like a 30-minute interview, we talked about their upcoming concert series that they're doing on the road a little bit, and then coming to 54 Below for their Legally Bound concert that they've done before. How they kind of pick the songs that they move in and out. What's it like for them to live together and to work together? What are their go-to songs on road trips? We also got a little bit of insight about the upcoming Jersey Boys film that Andy recently filmed.
Yeah.
So we talked about that. That is all in your feed now, whether it's the Patreon feed or the regular feed. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, so this is like, they've done this show before, right?
Legally Bound?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've done it before. There's an album out of it, but
that's what I thought. Okay.
They, as Orfeh said, they have such a huge repertoire of songs. They often just like pull things in and out, so it's not necessarily going to be.
That's what I was going to ask, if they've switched it up a bit, especially over the past year when know just reworking stuff was the only thing to do anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if they didn't specify how much it would be different, but she said basically they usually only have to really do a ton of rehearsing for the songs that they're putting into the show. And she talked about them moving things in and out, but she did not give away, maybe they haven't finalized their set list yet.
It's possible.
Yeah. But what's cool about this is if you head over to the Patreon feed, patreon.com/Broadway Radio, I threw in a few little jokes and segments and outtakes at the very end of the episode.
Oh, nice.
That we cut. Just a couple minutes of extra Orfeh and Andy goodness. So much fun. They literally are the coolest people in the world, and they're the kindest and most generous. Yeah, they're absolutely fantastic. So we really enjoyed them. And then Grace and I had a few conversations about Broadway returning, which later in the episode here, Ashley, I'm going to pose a couple questions to you that I posed to her. So be prepared.
Alrighty.
All right, so Ashley, we are going to start the news today with a story that neither one of us really wants to talk about, but
true.
We kind of have to anyway, because at least until Sunday morning was the biggest story in theater Twitter. And that's because after we recorded Friday's episode on Thursday night, news broke in the New York Post's page 6 that two-time Tony nominee Laura Osnes had recently been fired from a concert in the Hamptons because she refused to get vaccinated. She was supposed to do a one-night production of Crazy for You with Tony Yazbek, who she has obviously done the show with in multiple forms and fashions before. It was going to be part of a weekend or multi-day celebration of Susan Stroman, who obviously directed the Encores concert that they were doing of Crazy for You at one point. Additionally, according to the Post's Michael Riedel, Osnes had been vague about her vaccination status during the early parts of rehearsals and the lead-up, until Tony himself actually pressed her on it because he has two young children at home that he was concerned about. After that, she finally admitted that she was not vaccinated and that she didn't trust the shots. Osnes was then fairly quickly fired and reportedly replaced by Broadway's Little Mermaid and Christine Daae Sierra Boggess. Now, Ashley, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I feel like you and I have made our thoughts on this very well known, and we don't know the whole story, and it's coming from page 6, which is always a bit sus to begin with. But I will say Osnes has been very outspoken and fairly freely identifies herself as a Christian conservative, which I think a lot of people are attaching to this story. I have no idea if that has impacted her decision or not, so I'm not going to make that leap myself.
Sure.
But it is noted in this page 6 article. But I do feel like we need to applaud Tony for forcing the truth out of her to do what he can to keep his family safe. I honestly believe that if you don't want to get the shot, fine, don't get the shot. I personally think it's incredibly selfish and irresponsible of you for not to get the shot. But if you don't want to get it, fine, don't get it. But tell the people you're around that you haven't gotten it. And if you choose to do that, other people, including your employers, can make choices based on that as well.
Sure.
So, good for Tony for getting the truth out there that Laura obviously did not want to disclose ahead of time on her own. And a lot of people are thinking this could be the end of Osnes's Broadway career. I honestly don't know if I would go that far at this point.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That.
But it's been a mess, and it continues to get messier. And everything about this just makes me feel icky, other than Tony Asbeck being a stud and Sierra Boggess getting a new job.
Yeah, exactly. Both kings and queens, respectively. You already said it was selfish, and we've talked about people not getting vaccinated being selfish. And I'll say it as often as possible. I think it's selfish especially if you're in a field where you're around other people to this extent. You're on stage with them, you're working intimately with them, and then you're going to make the decision to not get vaccinated because you don't,
and not tell them.
And not tell them, and because you don't believe in the science, whatever, which is, of course, ridiculous, because I'm sure other vaccinations are required to do other parts of your job, especially if you're traveling abroad and working abroad, as we all know is the case.
Which Laura is scheduled to do in January with Jeremy Jordan. Yeah.
Weird. So she clearly has other vaccinations. So this, as it always does, reads to me as more of a political statement, which is why the Christian conservative stuff ends up coming up. Never mind that it's also the New York Post, so of course it's going to come up. But yeah, someone already said it and I forgot who, and I'm sorry, but I can't imagine watching what happened with Nick Cordero and his family, even from a distance, and then just not doing what you need to do, and that's get this vaccine. I think it's unbelievably selfish in every way. I think it's insulting to the people you work with. I think it's insulting to the people who put on shows and the people who have suffered and the people who have died, because it's not just Nick Cordero. We had Terrence McNally. We've had several other people die in the past year. And I don't know how you go through that and see your colleagues die around you, or people that write the shows that you perform, and just say, I'm not going to do that.
I think that there is a legitimate discussion to be had about people who, for whatever reason, don't have the privilege of getting all of the information that someone like you or I or Laura Osnes has at their disposal, for whatever that is, education or financial or just accessibility. I think that's important.
Definitely.
And then also people coming from different communities, whether that be racial, ethnic, or whatever, that have been victimized when it comes to medical practices in this country in the past. I think that those people who are choosing not to get vaccinated, there's a much higher threshold for me in terms of tolerance for those people than rich white people who are doing it, like you said, potentially out of a political statement for themselves.
And even there, there's a very small portion of me that has maybe a little bit of sympathy for those people, especially like people in rural communities who are, let's face it, watching Fox News and nothing else, and have been told for months and months and months not to get the vaccine, even though their anchors are all vaccinated. The former president was vaccinated, all of that and beyond. I grew up in a Christian conservative household as well, so I understand that. It took so long to get my father vaccinated, but he did it. It's just, so I have I have a very, very small amount of sympathy, because if you've got that propaganda thrown at you all day, every day, there's only so much you're going to listen to. But that said, as you said, someone with the privilege like Laura Osnes, who also is working in a very liberal industry, it's ridiculous.
No, nothing I'm going to add to that. So let's take a real quick break here and get into some of those questions that I asked Grace on This Week on Broadway, which, of course, you can get. You can get that episode before anybody else with all the bonus features over on patreon.com/Broadway Radio. We released that at 7:30 on Saturday, because we did the interview on Saturday afternoon. Nice. So you got it 20 and a half hours before the regular feed got it. So head over there and get signed up for our Patreon. But 2 questions for you, Ashley. First, what Broadway show that you have not yet seen on Broadway that's opening, let's say, between now and the end of the year, are you most excited to see once it returns?
I've got two. And one I've talked about several times on the show, and that's Caroline or Change. I was really looking forward to that revival before the shutdown, and even like roaming around the city where like subway posters are still up for it. It happened for the past year. Get like a little weepy in my heart about it because I've wanted to see it for so long. The other is Flying Over Sunset because I am notoriously a James Lapine person. So that I've been very, very much looking forward to. So those are definitely the big ones. There are other shows, and we'll talk about it in a second. There are other shows that I've seen, just not on Broadway.
Yeah, so you're excited about Flying Over Sunset despite the Kit and Yorkie-ness of it all.
I love the Kit and Yorkie-ness.
Okay.
You're the anti-Kit Yorkie person of the duo here.
They seem like lovely individuals.
Yeah.
I just don't love their music. But anyway,
Excited.
So that second question, which I had to clarify. I had to clarify the first one because I didn't want you answering the same thing for both. But what show are you most excited or likely to see again once it comes back?
Company.
Yeah.
Obviously. Company. I've only seen it twice so far, so I'm very much looking forward to November 15th when I get to see it the third time. The other one, and what I, need to clarify on, are shows that I've seen off Broadway, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing them on Broadway, and that's in repertoire, Dana H. and Is This a Room Again?
Yeah, Grace and I both had that as answers for what we were looking forward to seeing.
I'm really not surprised for you, considering you miss every venue show ever.
I know. I won't do that again, I promise.
You can't do it. You gotta catch it this time. I don't feel like either of those are Broadway shows, but I think they're such exceptional shows. I don't care where you mount them. I'll go and see them.
Yeah, and the Lyceum isn't huge, so it hopefully will work. But all right, let's get back into the news, Ashley. Friday, Actors Equity and the Broadway League announced a renegotiated contract terms for actors and stage managers on prorated weekly schedules. Now, as we've discussed before, since the typical Broadway contract is built around an 8-show week, there will need to be adjustments as some shows are returning with fewer than a full week of performances. According to Broadway News, and this gets confusing, so we're going to have to break this down. Quote, if a Broadway production plays less than the typical 8 shows per week, producers are allowed to prorate salaries for actors and stage managers per the Actors Equity Agreement. However, even if a production plays 6 or even fewer performances, producers have agreed to pay actors and stage managers for at least 7 shows per week. So unless I'm misreading that, I looked for another source and no one else is reporting this, and I normally get AEA press releases, and I didn't for this. But basically, it's saying the producers are either going to pay for 7 shows or 8 shows per week. Yeah,
that's what that sounds like. I mean, it feels very clear.
But it seems like a really oddly way to word it.
Definitely.
So we'll see. But keep in mind, this does not include the first week of shows, which obviously can be shorter as previews begin midweek. They're not going to punish them for starting on a Friday or whatever. Also in the agreement, AEA and the league eliminated 10 out of 12s, which are the technical rehearsals in which actors work 10 hours over a 12-hour period. And they also included new anti-harassment and bullying language and all of that stuff. The agreement applies to all Broadway productions that begin before March 1st of next year and apply for the first 8 weeks of performances. After you've gotten into the show 2 months, they are going to resort back to an 8-show-a-week contract.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, weird wording for all of that, but I mean, it's legalese, so not really.
CBA stuff, yeah.
Exactly. Not too surprising. Glad to, obviously, the stuff about 10 out of 12s and the anti-harassment, which very obviously needed as we've continued to talk about stories.
Absolutely. Or not talk about them.
Soon to talk about them, maybe.
Maybe. Next up, on Friday on PBS, the much-anticipated documentary follow-up Broadway: Beyond the Golden Age premiered on the public Broadcasting System. Is that right? PBS?
Yeah.
Via their Great Performances series, and is now available to stream on the network's app and website. The doc had been in the works for literal decades, as the filmmaker collected interviews with the likes of Carol Burnett, Glenn Close, Andre DeShields, Jane Fonda, Robert Goulet, Liza Minnelli, thank you, Cheetah Rivera, Dick Van Dyke, Ben Vereen, and more. However, unfortunately, filmmaker Rick McKay died in 2018, leaving the doc in limbo for a long time. McKay, for a lot of Broadway fans, is perhaps best known for his previous iconic documentary, Broadway, The Golden Age, Beyond the Legends Who Were There. And both of these documentaries are done very similarly, with archival footage and tons of interviews with folks.
My favorite.
Yeah, this new one focuses on the years 1959 through 1983. Actually, I have the original Broadway, The Golden Age on DVD. And I've watched it many times, shown it to students many times, so I cannot wait to get around to watching this one. I've got it saved on my DVR. I save every Great Performances performance on my DVR, so I have this one waiting for me when I have a chance to watch it. As
you should. They're all exceptional. I can't wait for this one. And we kind of talked about it before we started recording, that it's one of those things that slips both of our minds. But I mean, that first of all, this interview, like the cast of interviewees, is ridiculous. I love all of those people, so I will hear everything they have to say forever. And PBS just always puts on excellent work, especially when it comes to theater and great performances. It is service, not system, by the way.
Oh,
PBS.
A public broadcasting system? Service.
Public broadcasting service. I used to work for an affiliate, and I still agreed with you on system, so now I feel like
So this is your fault.
A broken person. Yes.
This is your fault.
This is my fault.
Yeah. There apparently was also some footage in this of the legendary Liza Minnelli put-in with Cheetah Rivera to Chicago, where she kind of dipped in for a kind of short, unannounced run in the show. And there's some footage of the put-in there as well, which is
that's amazing.
Amazing. So finally in this section, it was announced on Friday that Leighton Williams and Bianca Del Rio will return to the roles that they have in the past and will, coming up here this fall, play in the London production of Everybody's Talking About Jamie when the show makes its U.S. debut at the Amundsen Theater in L.A. beginning on January 16th. Leighton Williams will play Jamie New, and Roy Haylock, best known as Drag Race champion Bianca Del Rio, will play Hugo/Loco Chanel, which is a great drag name. So
good.
Ashley, I don't believe this show has announced an official tour or even Broadway plans yet. But we know it has to be coming, especially with the movie. And this would seem like a really good way to kick it off. If you're going to do a show about drag, you would want to have one of the most famous drag queens in the country leading that production.
For sure. Yeah, I would honestly be very surprised if this doesn't make it to Broadway. I feel like they've kind of talked about that, their intentions to do that a lot so far. And then, as you said, the movie coming out, and now that they're kicking off this run, it feels pretty inevitable.
Yeah, and a lot of things have changed because of the pandemic and the movie, and we've heard a lot of different things before and after the movie was announced, so it's kind of interesting to see what happens next with this one. All right, let's close up the show with a feel-good recommendations. As part of the Great CBS Sunday Morning, the news broadcast aired a video that was made by NYC Next, which is an organization dedicated to building New York City into a more equitable place for all. And they had just a ton of stars, many of them Broadway related, sing the iconic Billy Joel song, New York State of Mind, across the city. It was fantastic. We had the likes of Sarah Bareilles, Victoria Clark, the aforementioned Tom Kitt, LaShans, Idina Menzel, Brian Stokes Mitchell, Kelly O'Hara, Peppermint, another one of the most famous, one of the other most famous drag race alums in the country. Also, ironically, not listed in the YouTube credits, but Jerry Dixon and Mario Cantone were in there. And then some other familiar faces like Joan Osborne, Andy Cohen, Stephen Colbert, Suzanne Vega, and some other people who I'm sure are famous but I don't know who they are. And actually, someone I've interviewed before was in there as well, Brian Newman, who's a trumpet player and is part of Lady Gaga. He's Lady Gaga's band leader, but a trumpet player of his own acclaim and singer. Him and his wife, Angie, who is a burlesque star, were in there as well.
Nice.
But this is great. I love that song. I love Billy Joel. Billy Joel's Greatest Hits 1 and 2 is like one of the seminal albums of my childhood.
Very much same. Very
So this is a
good.
cool video because they're all just around New York City singing it. And it's a very, very cool thing. Makes you all feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Yes, indeed.
All right, everybody, that's all that we have for today. Thanks for listening to Today on Broadway. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Broadway Radio, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BWWMatt. Ashley, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at No This Is Ashley.
All right, everybody, don't forget to head over to patreon.com/Broadway Radio. We will be recording our review roundtable of the back half of the Schmigadoon season this week. So we will be up later this week, and you will only be able to hear that at patreon.com/Broadway Radio. Anyway, everybody, have a wonderful Monday and a wonderful week, and we'll be back to talk to you tomorrow.